I'm like, go to the YouTube page. So good evening and welcome to Kiwanis Let's Talk. It's Thursday, July 1st. We're on the second half of the year. 6 months are done. That's amazing. I don't know where the year has gone, but it's great to be here. So this is Sue Peterson from the Michigan District, and a few people joined us last week for Kiwanis Let's Talk Live in Salt Lake City. We canceled it, and then a few people said, yes, can we make it happen? And then a few people said no. So I jumped on for about a half an hour. Ethan Zahn stopped by and said hi. And Rachel Gliani, the other person, stopped by and said hi. Tana Early, who was the Circle K International president, she stopped by and said hi. So we had a few guests that showed up. No videos last week, but it was a great time to catch up with people. And for those of us that had a chance to go to Salt Lake City, it was a great experience, and it was really nice to see people.
I didn't find you, Sue, for that. I tried, but
yeah, we had challenges. So the Wi-Fi wasn't the strongest. So I just said, well, we'll do what we can. So, all right. So just to give you an update on what's coming up, July 8th, Meredith Taylor will be with us to talk about club leadership education and how that's going to roll out for us with the international training program. The 15th, we have a panel of lieutenant governors from around the country going to talk to us about being a lieutenant governor and what is involved with that. Bryce Kinder will be with us on the 22nd. We'll talk about member services, Kiwanis member services, and who they are and what they do. And on the 29th of July, Kate Majewski from Dollar Days, who is one of our partners, will talk about Dollar Days and who they are and what they do. And then August 5th, the Washington, D.C. Kiwanis Club is going to talk about their Student Leader Awards and the $55,000 worth of scholarships they gave out this past year. So they're going to do that. And then we have one open week, but I have an ask out, and then we're pretty well filled up for the rest of the year to take us through November. And one that you'll want to put on your calendars, and I haven't posted this out on Facebook yet, but on September 16th, and I realize that's a couple of months away, so we're thinking about it. We have invited several individuals from communities, a superintendent, a police chief, a nurse, and a nonprofit to come in and talk about community analysis. We talk a lot about doing a community analysis and encourage our clubs to do it, but we really don't show them how to do it. So we're going to bring a panel on to talk about things that they would suggest we ask, things that might be helpful to our Kiwanis clubs, and things to do. So we're moving towards a few more panels along the way. But tonight, I'm very excited to have with us a Michigander, Tura Foster-Gillespie, whose parents are with us tonight. I see they're the picture that's on the wall that's just white, or with the white wall with the cornucopia basket, right? That's what it looks like. Yeah, there he is. There's Dad.
Because we put you on the big screen TV. And,
oh, there you go.
Okay, so we can see you better. Okay,
we're good. All right. So Tura Foster-Gillespie is the founder of Teaching Cultural Compassion, which works to help kids and their adults find books with positive representation of underrepresented demographics. In her day-to-day work, she focuses on teaching groups of parents and other adults at libraries, churches, and even Kiwanis clubs how to ensure they are instilling children with a sense of their own innate dignity and the innate dignity of people who don't look like they do. Tura is passionate about diverse children's books and growing a more compassionate society, and loves to brainstorm with anyone who wants to do the same. So Tura, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's welcome Tura to tonight. If you would make sure that you're muted, I'll put her on a spotlight so she's on the thing. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and she will also take questions at the end. So Tura, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. Kiwanis has been a second home for me my entire life, so I am excited to see all of you. And if you think that my name sounds a little bit familiar to you, maybe not just from Sue, if you read your Kiwanis International magazine, I got to be a part of the article on compassion for this summer issue. So, so coming from that, I am very blessed to be here this evening. And I would like to say, because I do know that we have some international guests here this evening as well, that when I have made presentations like this to international conferences before, I have been told that even though all of my research and data is for the United States, they see very similar things happening in their countries as well. So hopefully you still find this applicable. And if you ever want to brainstorm about how to use the kind of resources that I've used here where you are, let me know. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you all can see where we're headed this evening. So as Sue said, I am the Reverend Tura Foster-Gillespie, and I am a former bookseller, a former children's minister, and the active aunt of 5 amazing kids, and growing adopted aunt of lots more. So why are we doing this? In 2017, less than 25% of children's picture books published in the United States featured people of color, and even less than 15% were written and or illustrated by people of color. I started doing some of this research in 2014, and the numbers have gotten a little bit better. They're still really abysmal, in my opinion. And I would even make a caveat saying, so you see my little bar graph here. Asian Pacific Islander looks like it's greatly represented. Well, unfortunately, that number looks a little funny like that because Asian Pacific Islander authors and illustrators tend to write and illustrate books that feature not Asia Pacific Islander kids or antagonists and protagonists, excuse me. So that looks fine, but this is both represented and written or illustrated by. And then the American Indian number looks pretty good, but it actually has evened out because the population is shrinking, not because the number of books is growing. So you can kind of get a sense of that. I'll give you a little bit more numbers here for a second. This is over the last, 20, 30 almost years now. And this is how many percentage of people of color or Native people. This is written by or about. So again, that number is a little higher than that 25% I just gave you, but that is because we have some authors who don't feature children of color as their protagonists in their books. To give you a slightly less statistical and a little bit better of a picture, this next slide comes out of the Cooperative Children's Book Center at the University of Wisconsin. And it shows you that the majority of books, about 50% of the main characters are white, and the majority of those are boys, just as a point. 27% are animals or trains or trucks or other things that are not human. And then that's what we're looking at, as if we want our kids to see themselves represented and see themselves as potentially the hero of the day. We all know that kids' books tend to have something along the lines of a plot where something is in danger and the kid has to save the day, right? So if we want all of our kids to see themselves as potentially the hero of the day, not all of our kids get to see that. So that's the dire situation that's happening here. So from all of that, Teaching Cultural Compassion was born. And I'll tell you a quick story while we're here. So one of the reasons that I began focusing on kids' books is while I was a bookseller at a major book retailer that was still brick and mortar here, I was not supposed to be in the children's section. That was not my usual place to be. My usual place was helping adults find adult books all around the bookstore. But as retail goes, when someone goes on a break, someone else has to cover their area. And my friend went on her break and she was the children's person. And I drew the short straw that day to go cover children's for the half an hour that she would be gone. I was straightening things and doing just fine, and I didn't think anything of it until an African-American mom walked up to me and just disappointed and frustrated looked at me and said, "Don't you have any books that look like my kids?" And I didn't have an answer. My quickest thinking led me to 2 books. You are probably thinking of the same 2 books right now if you grew up in the United States or had children grow up in the United States, and they are Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats and Corduroy. Now, both of those books were published originally in 1963. It's not okay that I couldn't come up, that working at a bookstore, I couldn't come up with anything newer that I knew would be on the shelf. And because it's a retail establishment, if things don't get purchased, they don't come into the store, they don't stay in the store. And so even if I knew 5 other titles from the last 5 years, I couldn't guarantee they would be there. If they weren't something that people consistently asked for, it wasn't going to consistently be in stock. I felt awful and I knew I had to do something. So I started collecting titles, and Teaching Cultural Compassion was born. Now, as I said, I am the Reverend Tura Foster-Gillespie, and so at the time I was also in seminary, and I knew that my faith was telling me I really needed to do something about this. And so that's when I thought about, well, we want to try and teach compassion and empathy to all of our children, and we want to teach our children to have compassion and empathy for all other people. That's what we want to do. That's where my faith was leading me. And that is, what's bad about compassion? Nothing. So as I say on the slide that you're looking at, cultural competence is often defined as referring to the ability to honor and respect the beliefs, language, interpersonal styles, and behaviors of individuals and families. That is an academic definition. And so I thought, okay, cultural competence is one thing. We do want our kids and other adults to know how to interact with people who come from a different background than they do. But what I really wanted to foster was that compassion and empathy. So I have defined cultural compassion as the first step of the process. If we really want kids to want to learn about other cultures and open themselves up to other people who don't look like them, who don't have the same family background, etc., we have to first teach them about the innate dignity of all humanity. And so that is where I started teaching cultural compassion. And so this is what my website looks like. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But at the moment, I actually would like to read you one of these picture books, because what can you do? What can you do with the problem? So this is What Do You Do with a Problem? And it's written by Kobe Yamada and May Basom. And it is read to you today with permission from Compendium Books. I don't know how it happened, but one day I had a problem. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. I really didn't like having a problem, but it was there. Why is it here? What does it want? What do you do with a problem? I thought. I wanted to make it go away. I shooed it. I scowled at it. I tried ignoring it, but nothing worked. I started to worry about my problem. What if it swallows me up? What if my problem sneaks up and gets me? What if it takes away all of my things? I worried a lot. I worried about what would happen. I worried about what could happen. I worried about this and I worried about that. And the more I worried, the bigger my problem became. Sidebar, I think adults, we recognize that, but knowing it is different from acting on it, right? I wished it would disappear. I tried everything I could to hide from it. I even found ways to disguise myself, but it still found me. And the more I avoided my problem, the more I saw it everywhere. I thought about it all the time. I didn't feel good at all. I couldn't take it anymore. This has to stop, I declared. Maybe I was making my problem bigger and scarier than it actually was. After all, my problem hadn't really swallowed me up or attacked me. I realized that I had to face it. So even though I didn't want to, even though I was really afraid, I got ready and I tackled my problem. When I got face to face with it, I discovered something. My problem wasn't what I thought it was. I discovered it had something beautiful inside. My problem held an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to learn and to grow, to be brave, and to do something. It showed me that it was important to look closely because some opportunities only come once. So now I see problems differently. I'm not afraid of them anymore because I know their secret. Every problem has an opportunity for something good. You just have to look for it. So what can we do, friends? And I am here today to tell you there's lots of things we can do. So the first thing that I want to tell you that we can do with our problem, so we can make sure that the books we read to children are inclusive. I know that this is Kiwanis, and I know that children are number one in the books. And I know that a lot of our Kiwanis clubs do reading with children at libraries or volunteer at schools or other places. And so make sure that the books that you read with children are inclusive, even if it's your own children or grandchildren. So money talks to publishers. Like I said earlier, if a book wasn't bought in often enough, regularly enough, I couldn't promise it was going to be in stock. That's the same with things getting published. If people don't buy an inclusive title often enough, publishers say, oh, well, then no, there's no market for that. We don't need to publish more of something like that. So money talks. We do need to make sure that we are looking at that. So what I have on the screen right now are my website, which is teachingculturalcompassion.com, and that will be on the screen again later. And up in the upper corner is a little link that says book search. And my searchable database, you can search by the age of the reader that you're going to be reading with. You can search by the gender of the main character. You can search by the ethnicity of the main character if it happens to be clear from the book. But you can also search by different categories. So things like if you have an Earth Day event coming up and you know you want to read with kids as part of your Earth Day event, you can find lots of books that feature the natural world. Or if you want to work with, if you know you're working with kids with a handicap and you want to quickly find books that show a handicap in pictures, you can search for differing abilities representation as well. Not always a book about a kid with differing abilities, unfortunately, but at least visual in the pictures. The other website I have up for you is Diverse Book Finder. It comes from Bates College in Maine. They do a lot of really great work. But one of the things that makes a difference between my list and their list is that they list every book that comes to them. You can even see on their, at the very top of their screen there, of their search, they specifically say that because a book is listed doesn't mean they recommend it. From my website, I do curate that. It is growing all the time, but I only list a book if I think it's actually positive representation. So that you'll get a lot more books at Diverse Book Finder. You will get a specific level of quality books if you go to my website. So the first one is to just make sure you know what's out there. The other thing you can do is make friends with teachers and ask them what's new. Make friends with your children's librarian at your local library. They always know wonderful things. You can also get on the mailing list of publishing houses and find out what's new and what's coming out, and just have kind of a running general idea of what's going on. Next, if you are buying books for your church or your club or a school or a library, or suggesting books to any of them, make sure that you buy books that feature girls, children of color, and other minority groups. Publishing companies, like I said, mostly care about money. You will see on the left-hand side of this screen, there we go, that Lee and Low publishers, who are specifically a BIPOC publishing house, that is their whole point of existing. They have lots and lots of great resources, free and available through their website. One of the infographics I showed you earlier is actually from them as well. But they have a classroom library questionnaire. So if you keep a collection of books, you can go to this questionnaire and have a good idea of what it is that you're missing, because a lot of the time we don't know what we don't know, right? So this knows for you, and it's easy to jump right down that questionnaire and see what you're missing. Next, here's the big one, and I know especially for Kiwanis, having book drives, right? So you can, if you're having a book drive, think about who the children are who are receiving these books. Another story of when I was a bookseller, we once partnered with this lovely organization, Casa Chirilagua. And so the kids of this nonprofit, that the kids they served, were going to be the ones receiving the books. You may guess, if you speak any Spanish at all, that this is an organization that mostly serves immigrant families, mostly from the Chirilagua area of Central America. And so we have a lot of kids who are bilingual, a lot of kids whose first language is Spanish, and a lot of parents whose only language is Spanish. So when folks were coming up to me wanting to donate, and they wanted to donate their very favoriteest books because they are really fun, really wonderful books, I asked them if they would also want to donate something else as well, because Harold and the Purple Crayon, as great as it is, and Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day are wonderful books in English with lots and lots of language featuring white boys. And so I would suggest books like Lucia la Luchadora or Marisol McDonald Doesn't Match, because those books feature a Latinx child. They also are bilingual. So not only by giving them these books are they seeing themselves as the hero of the day, but they're also able to create a moment with their parents who maybe don't speak English and maybe don't even read Spanish, some of them, to learn language and learn both languages with their child who's in school. So now you're creating a family moment instead of a family division. So just something to keep in the back of your head when you are doing a book drive. Who are these books for? And that is really most of what I wanted to say. But at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian, there's a lovely exhibit called Allies and War Partners in Peace, where the Oneida storyteller says, friendship is a precious thing, for only in friendship built on mutual respect does the tree of peace grow great and tall. And it continues, let us continue to live together beneath the branches of that tree. Let us be united and be of one mind about this. Let us be watchful with the eyes of the eagle, ever alert that we might place in jeopardy the gift of peace. Let us hold with sincerity and determined grip to our covenant chain of friendship in the hope that others will hold equal strength as partners, as they should, and allies as they must. And if we want to grow that mutual respect, we have to get to know each other. We have to be willing to get to know each other. And we have to see each other as somebody who could save the day. So even though I grew up in a little homogenous town in Iowa, it definitely benefited me that my parents gave me books that featured children of color. But I know not all of my friends had my parents. So I know that I want to give that gift to as many more kids as I can. And I know that parents and grandparents and teachers don't always know where to start. And that's why I'm here. I am willing to help in any way that I can. And so with that, again, there is my website. Feel free to share it with your family and friends. At the bottom of that page, you can even sign up for my mailing list. And you'll get an email maybe once a month or so about my latest recommendations. My latest article on the front page of my website is actually recommendations of kids' books good for adults. Adults should read picture books too. They're very comforting, and sometimes they can teach us things that we didn't learn as kids because that wasn't afforded to us at the time. So email me if you have a success story. If you think that there's some amazing book that you don't see on my list, please tell me about it. I'm always finding more. You can just always email me if you want book recommendations too. So again, there's my website and my email address, and I will stop sharing, and hopefully you guys have some questions for me.
Well, you don't have to worry about that with this group because we do have some questions. So Greg, I'll let you start.
Okay, hi, Tura. My question is this. Take, for instance, Harold and the Purple Crayon. For it to be considered a book that is part of cultural compassion, is it a matter if you took Harold and the Purple Crayon and you put a person of color as the main character in the book, and you wrote it in Spanish, would the same story be sufficient, or does the story need to be different to qualify as a cultural compassion, like the Dick and Jane series? If you took Dick and Jane and now they were different colors and you translated it with that, I mean, what are you looking for here? What are you trying to go after?
Absolutely. So the principle that has been brought up for a decade or so now by a previous author laureate of the Library of Congress is this idea of windows, mirrors, and now we've added sliding glass doors. So the idea is that it is important to look through a window. Your book should be a window to someone else's experience, or it should be a mirror, at least showing you yourself, or ideally that window would actually be a sliding glass door. So it would be something that opens up your mind to the experience of someone who's not like you. So in order for something to make my list, the book does need to feature a girl or a child of color or person of color. Some of them are biographies about adults, for instance. And it needs to not have anything negative or stereotypical about it. So sometimes there will be something that just because it includes someone of color, it does not put them in a positive light. For instance, there was a Nutcracker book that came out a few years ago that is it 12 drummers drumming and the maids milking and the dancers dancing and whatever were very diverse ethnicities. However, it was a little white boy giving these as gifts to a little white girl. And you can see where gifts as possessions makes that look really bad because you're now giving people of color to someone else. And that's not okay. So for instance, I wouldn't include that. However, a lot of the books that do have people of color as the main characters, like I said, there's lots of biographies, but a lot of them are true to the experience of that person most of the time because they're written also by an author of color or illustrated by a person of color. Does that answer that at all? That's what I'm looking for. I want to make sure it's visual representation. That's number one. So Harold and the Purple Crayon, if Harold had, if Harold were Latinx and it was a bilingual book, I'd be very excited about that. There's not a whole lot in that story that gives him place other than the fact that he has access to a purple crayon and an imagination. So, so yes.
So if a story is universal, so to speak, it as long as there are different editions of it with different ethnicities, we're good to go then, right?
I won't ever have, well, not, I won't ever. I most often do not have books that feature white boys because they get enough press. And so what I am trying to draw your eye to is the ones that don't get enough attention, the ones that actually seek out.
Yeah, no, and I'm talking about the story itself, not the characters and how they look. Yeah, okay, got it. All right.
If there were a new 2021 edition of Harold and the Purple Crayon and it featured somebody else or Haroldina and the Purple Crayon, you know, I would absolutely be excited about it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Gary also has his hand up.
Gary has a question.
Yeah, just we have a book program with my club and we buy in bulk because we're trying to get the bang for the buck. What of these books that you're looking at? Obviously, this is the population we're targeting is the type that are the ones that need these books. But if they're so expensive that we can't afford them, I don't know what normally we've been getting them through the Kiwanis partners, Scholastica and what have you. I didn't know if there was a cost for these books that's going to be prohibitive.
No. A picture book's a picture book's a picture book. They all range about the same. And even finding at least books that have multiple ethnicities showing. So for instance, this is a recent publication and you see all the diversity right there on the front cover.
Yeah.
We even have a wheelchair in there and it's about feelings. So, I mean, isn't that wonderful? To help kids talk through their feelings instead of just acting out, right? This is the point of this book. So, but no, it's exactly the same price.
Do you just serve as a reference or do you serve as a source for buying them?
I do not personally keep a stock. I currently do have an agreement with bookshop.org, who works with small bookstores. And so they're not going to be at a discount usually. Some of those small bookstores might be willing to do a bulk order for you and give you the discount that they get for it. But Scholastic certainly has plenty of diverse books. You just have to look for them.
Okay.
So yeah, so buying them in bulk or look at Lee and Low. Like I said earlier, I can put their website in the chat in a second. Lee and Low is always going to have diverse books, and that's a publisher that is very easy to work with and very easy to talk to. So you could go to somebody like them and say, hey, I want, even they might even do I want X age to X age and I want 100 books. Can you just send me a grab bag of 100 books? And they probably would give you a pretty good discount on that still.
Thank you.
Gail has put a question in the chat. Do you
Yeah.
know Child of Glass by Beatrice Magna? And if so, what do you think of it?
I cannot say that I know that one off the top of my head. No.
So I bought it for my grandson, and it's the story of a little girl who is made of glass. So she's transparent. And so all her feelings are shown. And for whatever, and I can't remember because I got it a while ago for him. And she leaves her home, and as she is traveling around, sometimes her feelings aren't quite so nice. And so all of a sudden people don't like her anymore. And so she has to figure out, does she want to continue her travels, or should she eventually go home? And basically that she has to accept that she has good feelings and bad feelings.
And is that a picture book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I will,
There's
I will look for it.
an email that I get a couple times a week called Brain Pickings by Maria. And she actually recommends children's books periodically. So I've gotten a couple of books based on her recommendations. But I was just
Cool.
curious if you had.
I ask if it's a picture book because a lot of times things are actually middle grade or upper fiction, and I don't have time to curate as much. I read a lot of middle grade or YA fiction, but I don't have time to create a long list of them because they just take longer to read than picture book.
No, it's a picture
Okay.
book. Yeah.
I'll look for it.
It actually looks like it was a TV production
It is.
by Child of Glass is a 1978 American made for television family fantasy film. Well, maybe it's not the same one.
May or may not be the same one.
May not be the same one, because that one shows that it's a Disney TV
I
based
got
on.
it.
Oh, this one's based on the novel by Richard Peck, The Ghost
Not the
Belong
same.
to Me. Not the same.
Not the same.
No, I got it on Amazon, and it wasn't all
Yeah.
that expensive.
No, I
It's-
did a quick search at my library and they have it listed as juvenile fiction. So older than what I usually work with.
Okay.
But I will check it out and find out. Thank you for the suggestion. That sounds exactly like the kind of thing that I look for.
All right, Mr. Greg, you're up.
Just to follow up to Gary's question. So books, places like Scholastic Services or First Books or RAF, if you say to them, I'd like to get some books, and can you send it with a diverse set of books or cultural or things like that, are they, do they know what you're talking about? Are they going to send them, or when you said you have to go look for it, or do we need to actually go look and select them ourselves?
If you want to ensure quality, I would go look for them and select them yourselves. But most of those customer service, though, they have, I'm sure, had that kind of request before. All of the publishers are aware of the movement of diverse books. We Need Diverse Books is another movement that's happening. That's weneeddiversebooks.com. And so there's a lot of call for this change in publishing. But like I said, until the money happens, they're not going to do a whole lot. So yeah, so the publishers should know. The book services should know if you kind of make that request up front.
So theoretically, Kiwanis could drive this whole thing, asking our partners to send these types of books, and the more they get, the more they'll put together. Okay, thanks.
And I guess, I don't know how Scholastic works. Is that a publishing company? I just know we call them, but because I'm wondering, following up on Greg's point a minute ago, can we ask them to start looking at picking out classic books that are well-known, but also asking them to see if they can make them more diverse?
You can. I would love to see the difference if y'all started asking that all of the time and see if it influences them. Because you guys, like you said, Gary, you're making a large purchase. So that's money that talks. I would love to see that change.
So I'm just looking on Scholastic's site, they have all kinds of different options, right?
Well, while Sue's looking, let me ask this: does there need to be? I put this. Does there need to be a change? Okay, so if a child is going to be selecting, you've got a books on a table, and then you ask them to go. You can take any book at all that they want. Are they going to naturally go to a book that reflects them, or is that something that needs to be talked about? I mean, I guess you know, does there need to be a change in saying, hey, now these are available and you can do this, or I'm wondering about at the receiving what's happening.
Yeah, the research that I've seen shows that children will naturally gravitate towards pictures that look like themselves. And a lot of the time, especially if it's a demographic of child who hasn't seen very many books that look like themselves, they're going to be so in awe and full of gratitude that they see themselves, that they might actually hesitate because they are shocked to see themselves represented. And so that, like, there's some of it that needs encouraging, as in they're going to stop in front of that table and look at it for a little bit before they pick it up. From one research thing I saw that a teacher did essentially that, made sure that there were the same percentage of books as the percentage in her classroom. And a couple of kids were just so overwhelmed by the fact that there was a book that looked like them that they were almost nervous to pick it up. So yes, so the kids will gravitate towards someone who looks like them, and that is empowering. But also, if books are out to just pick something up, kids perceive things that aren't just what we look like as well. So for instance, if there is a little girl who loves baseball, little white girl loves baseball, and I put out in front of them a book that features a young Japanese boy in an internment camp, but also playing baseball, a historical book talking about a story from World War II. She may gravitate to that because she has something in common with that front picture more than a picture that actually looks like her. Does that make sense? So there's that piece as well. I mean, quick story about that. I had a friend who had a 4-year-old when Obama was running for president the first time. And the little kid said, I like that guy because he looks like me. Well, now this is the whitest, blondest, blue-eyedest child you've ever seen. But he had ears that stuck out from his head. And he looked at Barack Obama and said, he looks like me. Right? So you never know exactly what the kid is going to pick up on, but interests that are obvious in the front that are the same, things like that.
So by the same token, I've always thought that it's also very important for children to see books that represent people other than themselves. So I'm very, very cognizant of that when I buy books for our grandkids.
Exactly, and that's that windows piece. And like I said, I grew up in a very homogenous white town in Iowa, and you all know my parents, or most of you do. And my mom was always interested in other cultures and wanted to make sure that we saw other things. So my parents made sure that we saw those books. Not everyone in my town had that. As part of my seminary training, I went to a historically Black church in Baltimore, and all of the books on their shelves had little white kids in them. All of my stories where I grew up had little white kids in them. So we're only learning that little white kids can save the day. Me and the kids at the historically Black church. Now, if we had little books everywhere that show the diversity, both of us learn that it doesn't matter what you look like, you could save the day. And so I think that's the really important part about the windows, is when you get out into the world and you see someone who's different from you, you know they could still be the one who saves the day. And that leads to that empathy and that compassion and respect.
Tara, one of the things that Kiwanis has talked about very much so is that we want our clubs to reflect the community that we're in terms of membership. So having said that, would it work if we were to Scholastic or whoever, send them, say, here is the demographic breakdown of our community by ethnicity and whatever. Can you send us books of a percentage based on that? Would that work?
You could, but I will again reiterate that most of your kids are seeing lots of books with white kids in them. So if the area is still a majority white, like Gail just pointed out, it's still very, very important for them to see through the window. And so if you just ask for diverse books, then you're giving mirrors to the kids who need them because they don't usually have one, and giving windows to kids who don't usually have one. So so that's where I would say just go with diversity and see what they send you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just happened to look on the Scholastic site, and I just typed in search for diverse books. It had more than 999.
Wow.
So it listed pages and pages and pages of them,
And
and all the pricing and stuff. And just by looking at the covers, you could see the diversity that was there.
And if they don't want to do that legwork for you for some reason or another, and you just want to know, I need 10 titles, these are the age groups we're looking for, just let me know. And I am more than happy to do that research of what Scholastic has and what they should send you. And then you can ask for those titles if you want to do that. I'm more than happy to help you with that.
Yes. Oh, I was going to say, yes, Mom.
Yes.
Scholastic used to also have a whole section of books in Spanish or bilingual books. And it was like a different form than the form that usually went home to most schools in this country. So I don't know what it's called or if they still have it, but they used to have it.
And they certainly have, I would assume when you're searching their book website, they probably have a tab that specifically says bilingual, and they might even break it down because I would bet that they do bilingual more than just Spanish now as well.
Mhm.
So you would be able to break that down if you wanted to on their search as well. But yes, they certainly do have them. Melanie.
So Tura, if you see a book without pictures on the front, but it says bilingual, do you then assume that it also is going to feature Spanish looking children or South American or something like that?
No.
Oh,
I don't assume that.
okay.
For instance, I believe there are probably bilingual editions of Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Okay.
Because classics get asked for,
Right.
and often less recently, the focus on assimilation in this country was very big, and so in teaching children new to this country English, we wanted them to also assimilate culturally and see the heroes that we have here and the classics that we have here. And so if the title looks familiar and it says bilingual, I would absolutely question it. But if it's, something about paletas, yeah, it probably features Latinx kids because that's a culturally Latinx thing. So that is ice cream from a little cart if you were on
Right.
or ice cream bars. Yeah. So
Thank you.
yeah, no, yeah, unfortunately, that's not something that's easy to assume. And there are books that have Spanish editions too,
Right.
necessarily, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. Have you read all of the books on your list?
I have personally read and recommend all of the books on my list. Yes, and there are over 1,300 of them as of now, and I've got The library says I have about 60 other ones at my desk that I need to read and add in. So yes, it is constantly growing.
Did you provide a list for us to, I'm sorry, I was multitasking in the background.
It's on my website. It's in the book search. If you just go to the book search website, the page itself, you'll be able to scroll through all 1,300 alphabetically, or you can narrow it down by the search rubrics that's there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I see Barb has her hand up.
I just wanted to thank you for offering to give us lists from Scholastic that are bilingual. That is huge saving of time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And if something, happens in your community that you think is unique, or you recognize that, hey, I have gone through, I think, this entire library, and I've got this one kid who is not represented in anything I've seen, let me know what that weird thing is. And like I said, I've read all of these books, and so I have a lot of them in my head. I can usually come up with some
Great. Thank
good
you.
recommendations right away. Absolutely.
Thank you. I would like to tell you that I put in the chat, we have an African-American children's bookstore called I See Me, but also we have a young middle school, well, he was in middle school when he started this, who started Books and Bros. And he led, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, they've both gotten lots of national attention. And
Yes,
exciting.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he went to our middle school and he was just the nicest young man. But he has started this book group where he leads, this little middle school boy leads the book discussions with all of to get kids from the hood, as he says, to start reading. And it's amazing what he's done.
I mean, you can imagine if you never see yourself featured in a book that are maybe not super interesting. And so he's one of those success stories of like, no, there are books about us. Come on, guys, let's read them.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, he's pretty outstanding. I'm interested to see what he does in his life.
Me too.
Becomes a lawyer.
Although he has now moved to Atlanta, so he's not here anymore. But he's got lieutenants who are carrying on the Books and Bros.
All right,
That's
any other
awesome.
questions? I've taken all kinds of notes over here.
Of course.
I'm like, okay, got to get all these down, So
A lot
And-
of great information.
great
And one
information.
more time, my email is in the chat box. Copy it down now if you haven't yet. And if you forgot something, or if you want more information about something, or like I said, if you need specific recommendations, or you're so-and-so is having a new grandchild, what book do I buy them? Just shoot me an email. I love doing those kinds of recommendations. So
It might be a great workshop for a convention.
Yes.
right.
To talk about what's there, and especially as that people start to get back in person.
And it's in Indianapolis next year.
That's right. We can make the recommendation. We don't have any other control after that.
Right. And what would be great to accompany that would be to have book titles there that we could purchase.
That's right.
I like the way Dave said that. Dave said, it's gonna be in Indianapolis. We're gonna be there. You better be there too.
That's right. That's what that was. But you're right. That would
My
be,
parents do like seeing me, amazingly enough. So yeah.
that's a great idea, is to have books available.
It would be really cool to see what the Kiwanis partners, the groups that Kiwanis already partners with, put pressure on them to come and have a booth.
Right.
Here
Right.
are the diverse books that we offer. Yeah.
Because we do work with Reading is Fundamental as well.
Yep.
So there may be some, they spoke with us several months ago.
Yeah. I was on for that one.
Yep. So
Yeah.
they may have something for us as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that was February 4th to be exact.
You're good, Sue.
Right. Well, the calendar is sitting in front of my face. As I'm waiting to confirm all the other events, right? Right, so, all right, well, thank you so much for being with us, Tara. It's great to see you. We miss seeing you here in Michigan, but we know that you're doing great things where you're at, and Mom and Dad can be proud of what you're doing and say hello. Yep, there's the thumbs up. And you know, she grew up in the Kiwanis family. So to be able to, you know, say this is someone who was one of us, and to have had her, you know, the work that she presented that was in the Kiwanis magazine in the summer, you know, it's great to see that kind of come full circle and us be able to have her here today. So I am going to stop the recording. Thank you for being with us tonight. And we'll remind everybody that next week we will have Meredith will be with us to talk about club leadership education and how that is going to happen on the Kiwanis International level. So I will stop, but let's thank Tura for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Sue, quick question. Where can we find the recording of these?